أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب.
The next hadith, hadith number 345. وعنه رضي الله تعالى عنه خرجنا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من المدينة إلى مكة فكان يصلي ركعتين حتى رجعنا إلى المدينة متفق عليه. This hadith number 345, also narrated by Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu ta'ala an, and he states that we went out with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this journey was the journey of Hajj. خرجنا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من المدينة إلى مكة فكان يصلي ركعتين, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam throughout the entire journey until they returned back to Medina, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued to pray his salawat as 2 rakats. So this hadith number 1 shows us that if a person is traveling and he is on a journey of more than 85 kilometers, then his salawat, the best thing for him to do is to make qasr as-salah and shorten his prayer into 2 rakats. But another question, if I'm traveling between London and Birmingham, and I am now in Birmingham, is there a specific number of days that I can shorten my prayer for? What if I want to stay in Birmingham for 20 days, 25 days, 2 months, 2 days? Is there a specific number that I am allowed to make use of this concession or not? This hadith also giving us an indication with regards to that matter, that the Prophet ﷺ throughout this entire journey, he performed qasr as-salah and he would shorten his prayer. The scholars, when they talked about this mas'ala, if a person knows that he is going to stay in a certain place for a specific number of days. Our first mas'ala, Muhammad has left London, he's gone to Birmingham, and he knows that he is going to stay in Birmingham for a specific number of days. Maybe he's decided to stay for 10 days, maybe 20 days, 200 days, but he knows that he's going to stay in Birmingham for a specific number of days. What happens in this case? Well, majority of the scholars are of the opinion, if you are going to stay in Birmingham for 4 days or less, then you can shorten your prayer for those 4 days or less. You're going to stay for 1, 2, 3 days, 4 days or less, then you can regard yourself as a musafir throughout the entire duration of your stay in this place of Birmingham. But if you intend to stay in Birmingham for maybe 25 days, then from your first day you are no longer regarded as a musafir. When you intended to stay in Birmingham for 20 days, for 2 months, 2 years, you ceased to be a musafir and you became a resident. So from your first day, you now complete all your salawat. So the opinion of majority of the scholars is that it revolves around 4 days. If you are less than 4 days, then you are a musafir. If you intend to stay more than 4 days, then you are no longer a musafir. The proofs for this opinion was this hadith and the matters behind this hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ, he did not allow the muhajirin to remain in Medina, to remain in Mecca more than 4 days. That's number 1. Number 2, they stated that when you intend to stay at a place, you are no longer regarded as a musafir. You are not on safar anymore. Your journey has ceased. So in reality, by the Arabic language, when you cease to be on travel, from that exact point, you should now begin praying complete salawat. But because the Prophet ﷺ had stayed in Mecca for 4 days, so we would stay and we would allow you to shorten your prayer for a duration of 4 days and nothing longer than that. So the proofs of majority of the scholars, I repeat, number 1, the Prophet ﷺ did not allow the muhajirin, the ones who made hijrah to Medina, for them to stay in Mecca for longer than 4 days. The Prophet ﷺ only allowed them to stay in Mecca for 4 days. They were not allowed to become residents of Mecca. So 4 days shows us that if they were there less than 4 days, they are no longer residents. And if they stayed in Mecca for more than 4 days, They have now become residents of Mecca, but that's not the place for them. They are muhajirin. They have made hijrah. They should not become residents of Mecca again. They should be and return back to Medina. And number two, that in reality, from the point of the language, when a person stops his safar, when he stops his journey, khalas, from that exact point, he should now begin to perform his salawat as complete, because he's no longer a musafir. But due to the fact that the Prophet ﷺ had allowed these Sahaba to stay there for 4 days and make qasr, we allow it to happen for 4 days. You are allowed to make qasr for the 4 days and nothing more. That's the opinion of majority of the scholars. As for the Hanafi scholars, they have stated 15 days. So if you travel to Birmingham and you intend to stay in Birmingham for 14 days, you are a musafir. You intend to stay in Birmingham for 13 days, you are a musafir. But if you intend to stay in Birmingham for 16 days, then from your first day, you are no longer a musafir and you complete all your salawat as normal, as though you were living at home in your normal locality. So that was the opinion of the Hanafi scholars, 15 days. And the last opinion, the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah and some of the scholars, is that this matter goes back to the urf and the customs and the norms of the people. And if a person in reality, he regards himself as a musafir and he is staying in Birmingham for 2 months on some study, khalas, as long as he regards himself as a musafir, he would be a musafir. And that's the opinion of minority of the scholars. Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, even Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah was of this opinion, until he found that there is no standard application of this mas'ala. 4 brothers are traveling, one's a musafir, one's not a musafir, and then he stated the ahwat opinion, and the opinion which is much more easier to regulate was the opinion of majority of the scholars, and Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah would then give the fatwa of the 4-day opinion. Also, from another angle, the 4-day opinion is the safest of all the opinions, because that's the minimum number that all the scholars are in agreement about. 4 days, everybody agrees on that. The Hanafis, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, everybody agrees on that. But when it becomes 5 days, majority of the scholars do not allow for a person to now perform qasr as-salah after 4 days. The Shafi scholars, the Hanbali scholars, the Maliki scholars do not allow this. Only the Hanafi scholars and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahumullah allow this. So now you've entered into the khilaf. Some scholars would regard your ibadah as being nullified. So the Muslim, when it comes to matters like this, he tries to take the safest opinion, which is the opinion of 4 days, the opinion of majority of the scholars, insha'Allah. And hadith number 347, وعن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال أقام النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم 19 يوما يقصر وفي لفظ بمكة 19 يوما رواه البخاري. That the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he was at a place and he made qasr salah for 19 days. Subhanallah. We were talking about 4 days. How could the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم make qasr for 19 days? We will discuss inshaAllah. وفي رواية لابن أبي داود 17, and in a narration 17 days, and in a narration 15, 15 days. وله عن عمران بن حسين 18, a narration of 18 days. وله عن جابر أقام بتبوك 20 يوما يقصر الصلاة. The Prophet ﷺ was at Tabuk and he made qasr salah for 20, he was there for 20 days. 8 بقصر الصلاة ورواه الثقات. He was there for 20 days and the Prophet ﷺ made qasr الصلاة إلا أنه اختلف في وصله. The topic of this hadith is that whoever travels to a place and he is unsure for how long he is going to remain in this place, how long can he make qasr salah for? This topic, if a person travels to a place, he's now traveled over 100 kilometers and he does not know how long he is going to be in Birmingham, for example, maybe a day, maybe 2 days, maybe 2 weeks. He's waiting for some business deal to get completed and he says tomorrow, no tomorrow, no tomorrow. He's waiting for the snow to stop or the rain to stop and he does not know when he is going to leave. For how long can he make qasr salah? The difference between this hadith and this mas'ala to the previous hadith was that in the previous case, a person travels, he comes to his destination and he knows exactly how long he is going to stay and remain in this place. As for our hadith at present, a person does not know how long he is going to be in this place. And so in this case, we see that the Prophet ﷺ was at Tabuk and he made qasr salah for more than 4 days, 18 days, 17 days in some narrations, 20 days in some narrations, and all of this is allowed. Majority of the scholars are of the opinion, if you are at a place and you don't know when you are going to leave, you can make use of all of the concessions of a musafir, even if it took you 10 years that you were making qasr salah. Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anh, he was in Azerbaijan and he was waiting for the snow to melt. And every day he would say, I'm going to travel tomorrow, I'm going to travel tomorrow. For 6 months he was waiting for this to occur and he made qasr salah for 6 months. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anh, he was in Nisabur and it has been narrated that for a year or 2 years he made qasr salah. He did not know when he was going to leave. Tomorrow, today, the next day. So he was in this constant state and so he made qasr salah for over a year or 2 years. So I repeat, if a person travels to a place, he is there at his destination and he does not know how long he is going to remain in this place, he does not know 2 days, 5 days, 20 days, a year, then he can make use of the concessions of a musafir for as long as he requires, inshaAllah. As for the narration of 19 days, then it is authentic. As for the narration of 17 days, in reality, this is also authentic. The narrator probably did not count the day of entrance into the destination and the day that the Prophet ﷺ left the point of destination. So he only counted the days that the Prophet ﷺ was actually there. As for the narration of 19, the Sahabi counted the day of entrance into the area and the day of exit from the area. As for the narration of 15 and 18, then they are weak. So from these two ahadith, we see number one, the Prophet ﷺ, if he was at a place and he did not know how long that he was going to remain in this area, he would make use of the concessions of a musafir for as long as he required. We also discussed in the previous hadith that if a person knows how long he is going to be and remain in his destination, then according to majority of the scholars, it is 4 days. If you're going to remain there for more than 4 days, from your first day, you cease to remain a musafir and you are now a muqim and you complete all your salawat as normal. The Hanafi scholars 15 days, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, and some of the scholars had stated that this returns back to the urf, the custom and the norms of the people. And with that, inshaAllah, we will now take a short break. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.